in nature, one of the most spectacular transformations takes place inside the cocoon of a caterpillar. Scientists call this process metamorphosis, and it's much more radical than most people realize. The caterpillar doesn't simply grow wings while keeping its old body. Inside the cocoon, its entire structure breaks down. Specialized enzymes dissolve the tissues until what's left is a kind of cellular soup. To the naked eye, it looks like destruction, as if the creature has died. But deep within that chaos, special clusters of cells called imaginal cells awaken, begin to organize, and build a whole new creature. What once crawled on the ground will soon take flight. And here's the deeper truth. The collapse inside the cocoon isn't failure. It's the very condition that makes the transformation happen. Without the breakdown of the old structure, the butterfly would never have been able to emerge. In a very real sense, human transformation follows the same principle. There are seasons in life when your old routines stop making sense. Your passions lose their fire. Your conversations feel shallow. From the outside, others may think you're simply unmotivated or drifting. On the inside, you might feel restless, foggy, or strangely out of place. But what if these sensations are not signs of decline at all, but the natural signals that your old identity is loosening its grip, making space for a new one to take form to the conscious mind? It can feel like collapse, but at a deeper level. This unraveling is preparation, just as the caterpillar must let go of everything familiar before it can fly. You too may be in the in-between space, no longer who you were, not yet who you're becoming. And that space, as unsettling as it feels, may be the clearest evidence that you are transforming, if that's what it feels like on the surface. Here's what's happening under the hood. Your brain is already reorganizing. After all, transformation is not a single step, it's a sequence. Neuroscience shows us why it begins with the brain destabilizing old circuits so new ones can grow. Quantum physics reveals why it feels like limbo, as if you're caught between two versions of yourself, until coherence is restored. Then comes the void, the quiet space of stillness that feels empty, but is actually full of potential. From there, the final friction arrives, old patterns knocking one last time, testing whether you'll slip back or embody the new. And finally, integration, the leap that doesn't feel like a leap, when the new wiring becomes natural and you begin to broadcast your future without effort. To understand why this phase can feel so disorienting, we need to look at what's happening inside the brain. In neuroscience, habits, beliefs, and even your sense of self are not abstract ideas floating somewhere outside of you. They are encoded in networks of neurons. Every time you repeat a thought or an action, those neurons fire together and strengthen their connections, a process called long-term potentiation, the foundation of learning and memory. With enough repetition, the brain even wraps those pathways in myelin, like adding insulation to electrical wires, so signals travel faster and more efficiently. That's why old patterns often feel automatic, like well-paved highways in the brain. But when you want to change who you are, the brain cannot simply paste a new identity on top of the old one. It needs to reorganize. This happens through synaptic pruning, weakening, or trimming connections that are rarely used, and reconsolidation, which temporarily makes old memories and beliefs flexible enough to be reshaped. During this stage, you may feel uneasy. The brain is essentially a prediction machine. It constantly relies on old models to guess what comes next. When those models no longer match your new choices, prediction errors arise. Norepinephrine heightens sensitivity. The amygdala flags uncertainty as potential threat, and your body may feel restless, anxious, or strangely empty. To the conscious mind, it might feel like collapse. But to the nervous system, it is simply renewal tearing down old architecture so that new structures can grow. As you continue practicing new ways of thinking, feeling, and acting, dopamine reinforces those fresh circuits, myelin strengthens them, and gradually the nervous system stabilizes again. Over time, the new model becomes your brain's default setting. For many people, this destabilization is transient weeks to a few months as new habits and sleep consolidate the change. What once felt like falling apart is, in truth, space being cleared, making room for a new version of you to emerge. However, if these feelings ever become overwhelming or persist for too long, it may be a sign to seek professional support. For most people, though, this temporary discomfort is simply the nervous system's way of preparing for renewal. If neuroscience explains how change rewires your brain, physics offers a lens for why the transition can feel so strange. In the quantum world, particles don't exist in just one fixed state. Instead, they exist in superposition, holding multiple possibilities at once until an observation causes the wave to collapse into a single outcome. We'll use quantum as a metaphor here, not to claim your life is a particle, but to make the felt sense of this phase easier to grasp. Human transformation mirrors this principle. In the in-between phase, you are like a system in superposition, still carrying the echoes of who you were, while also holding the blueprint of who you are becoming. Both possibilities coexist. And because you haven't fully collapsed into the new identity, life can feel like limbo, unsettled, directionless, strangely quiet. But this in-between is not a void of failure. It is the field of possibility. Just as the caterpillar must dissolve before the butterfly takes form, you too are holding the raw potential of multiple futures. The discomfort comes not because you are broken, but because your system is still choosing which reality to stabilize into. Physicists call this decoherence, a clean word for a messy feeling. When two systems that were once synchronized fall out of alignment. Spiritually, it feels like your inner world is racing ahead while your outer world is still catching up. That's why conversation seems shallow. Routines feel empty, and passions lose their spark. It isn't regression, it's recalibration. By coherence here, we simply mean consistency, your physiology, mood, and choices pointing in the same direction. Think of it like tuning a radio. When the dial is caught between two stations, all you hear is static. It doesn't mean the signal is gone. It means you haven't locked onto the new frequency yet. And when you finally align the dial with clarity, the noise dissolves, and the signal comes through strong. In the same way, your nervous system and your external life are adjusting to a new vibrational pattern. The friction you feel, the static, the emptiness, the restlessness is the sound of coherence being restored. So instead of judging the discomfort as failure, what if you saw it as proof? Proof that your old reality has already begun to dissolve, and that your field is in the very process of aligning with your future self. And if superposition is the model, the void is the lived experience of it, the felt pause between who you were and who you're becoming. Every transformation passes through what mystics and spiritual traditions call the void, the space between death and rebirth, between the collapse of the old and the arrival of the new. At first, it feels like emptiness, as if nothing is moving. But the void is not absence. It is potential. just as the soil must lie dark and quiet before seeds can sprout. The void is the hidden womb where your next reality quietly begins to form. Here's why stillness matters. When you stop scrambling to fix or force, your nervous system shifts gears, the stress response eases, and the recovery branch, what scientists call the parasympathetic system, takes over. That shift flows through the vagus nerve, the body's main calm and connect pathway. Your breath slows. With each longer exhale, your heart rhythm becomes more flexible, a state known as heart rate variability. That flexibility sends a steady signal of safety back to the brain. As the signal lands, your brain moves out of high, busy beta waves and into the slower alpha and theta range, the rhythms most supportive of learning and rewiring. The amygdala, your alarm center, begins to quiet. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that gives you perspective and choice, comes back online. In simple terms, survival mode powers down. Wise mode powers up. Even the brain's prediction system starts to settle. Normally, your brain runs on old models to guess what comes next. But when those models no longer fit, you feel restlessness, fog, or emptiness. Stillness reduces the noise. Your system updates the model, and in that quiet, new wiring takes hold. Chemistry shifts too. Stress chemicals like cortisol and norepinephrine subside. Meanwhile, dopamine and acetylcholine step in to mark what's rewarding and help you learn it. With repetition and deep rest afterward, new circuits strengthen, and myelin insulation wraps around them, turning fragile pathways into reliable highways. What once felt like effort slowly becomes your new normal. This whole alignment is what scientists and mystics alike call coherence body, emotions, and thoughts moving in the same rhythm. Coherence isn't just peaceful, it's the biological condition that makes deep change possible. It tells your system it's safe to rewire, and the clearer your internal signal becomes, the less static you broadcast outside. And this is where the quantum field comes in. Physics shows us that the field doesn't respond to effort, it responds to frequency. The more you push and strain, the more noise you transmit. But the moment you enter stillness, when your inner world settles into coherence, the field mirrors that signal back to you. This is why many describe the void as a kind of spiritual awakening. Not because it is filled with fireworks or visions, but because it strips away distractions. It silences the ego's need to perform, to control, to demand results. In the void, you are invited to stop chasing and start tuning. Think of it like drawing a bow before release. To an outsider, it looks like retreat, as if you're pulling backward. But the tension is not regression, it's propulsion. The further the string is pulled, the greater the force of the arrow. That is the void, the silence before the music, the dark soil before the bloom. So if life feels unusually quiet, if passions have faded and nothing new has arrived yet, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't try to resurrect what no longer fits. Instead, breathe. Let the stillness be sacred. Because in the void, you are not wasting time, you are becoming. One sign you're exiting the void is subtle. The past knocks again. Old patterns reappear not to punish you, but to check your coherence. As you move deeper into transformation, there comes a peculiar moment of tension. The old version of you hasn't fully released, and the new version hasn't fully anchored. It feels like standing with one foot on each shore, stretched between timelines. This is the phase where friction shows up, not loud chaos, but subtle static. You might notice old fears resurface, a familiar trigger reappears, or an old habit tempts you back into its comfort. It can feel like regression, as if you've undone all your progress. But in truth, this isn't a step backwards. It's the final test, not a punishment from the universe, but a gentle calibration. Are you sure you're ready to release who you were in quantum terms? This is the last moment of superposition. Both realities exist side by side, the one where you stay the same, and the one where you evolve. Until you choose. Both timelines are possible. And the choice isn't just about what you do, it's about the vibration you embody. This is where many people stall. They interpret the reappearance of old patterns as failure. They think, I must not be growing if I still feel this way. But what's really happening is that the field is offering you one last chance to align with your new frequency. The past is knocking, not to punish you, but to check if it still has a claim on you. Here's the key: you don't leap by resisting the old or wrestling it into submission. You leap by embodying the new. Every time you choose to respond from presence instead of panic, from trust instead of fear, you strengthen the signal of who you're becoming. And the quantum field, which always mirrors coherence, begins to rearrange your external world accordingly. Think of it like broadcasting. If you keep transmitting the frequency of your past self-fear, control, scarcity, the field has no choice but to echo that back. But the moment you shift your internal signal, you broadcast your future instead. You send out a frequency so clear, so coherent, that the field collapses into alignment with it. Paradoxically, the final test feels ordinary. It doesn't arrive as dramatic chaos. It shows up in a quiet moment, an old conversation that no longer fits, a habit that feels strangely heavy, a choice that once seemed logical but now feels misaligned. And in that moment, the question is simple. Will you reach back for the comfort of what you've outgrown? Or will you stand in the vibration of who you're becoming? Even before the evidence appears. The leap happens in silence. It's not about proving yourself, fixing yourself, or convincing anyone else. It's about coherence, the courage to embody your new self when it's not yet convenient, applauded, or validated. That's the real mastery. So if you're feeling the friction right now, pause. Notice the invitation to regress, and then breathe. Choose alignment. Because the moment you do, the field stops reflecting your past and starts reflecting your future. Hold that signal long enough, and something quiet but decisive happens. The new wiring becomes natural. That's integration. Here's the part no one tells you about transformation. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. The quantum leap you've been waiting for rarely feels like a leap at all. One day you simply wake up, and something inside you is different. The trigger that used to send you spiraling, it's quiet. The anxiety you thought would always be there, it's gone. The problems that once consumed you, they no longer feel like yours to carry. That's how integration works. Neuroscience calls it rewiring. The old neural pathways of fear, doubt, and scarcity weaken, not because you fought them into silence, but because you stopped feeding them. And quantum physics has its own word for this collapse. The field no longer holds multiple outcomes for you. Your coherence has locked in a singular frequency, and everything else falls away. But because this shift feels so natural, so quiet, the mind often doubts it. Was that it? Shouldn't something bigger have happened? That's the old programming talking the part of you that equates growth with struggle, proof, and drama. Yet in truth, The most profound transformations are the subtle ones. The ones that become so woven into who you are that you forget who you used to be. And this is where your real work begins. Not to chase more signs, not to test the field, not to keep asking if it's working. Your task now is to stabilize the frequency you've already stepped into. To let your new coherence become your baseline, your new normal. Transformation isn't about intensity, it's about integrity. It's not a burst of effort, but a steady resonance that carries through your daily life. This is why so many people miss the gift of this phase. They jump, they glimpse, they even embody a new state for a moment, but they don't hold it. Doubt creeps back in. Old patterns resurface. They search for evidence instead of trusting alignment. And slowly, they begin to unravel the very shift they've just created. But you don't have to. You can choose to live from this new frequency until it becomes effortless, like gravity. At first, it takes awareness. Then, it becomes your atmosphere. Eventually, it becomes your identity. Not a role you play, but a signal you broadcast effortlessly into the field. So if you've been wondering, am I really transforming? Pause. Look within. Do you feel calmer, clearer, more present than before? Do you sense more space inside you, as if something heavy has been lifted? That's not emptiness. That's freedom. That's the new you, integrated. And from here, everything else, your relationships, your work, your dreams, begins to reconfigure itself to match the signal you're broadcasting. Not because you're forcing it through effort, but because you've aligned with it. This is the real fruit of self-improvement, not temporary motivation, but lasting embodiment. Anchor it daily in breath, in choices, in how you show up. So hold your frequency, trust your stillness, live as the version of you that your future has already chosen, because you're not waiting for transformation anymore. You are the transformation. So don't just notice the change, live it. You are no longer preparing for your future. You are broadcasting it.